Hello and welcome to the MuddyBootz Allotment channel. My name is Nigel Jewkes, and in this new series, Growing Made Easy, I'll be taking a look at some of the vegetables that I grow in easy to follow steps, from sowing the seed right the way up to harvest. In this episode, we shall be looking at the various ways of growing potatoes. Now, potatoes are a versatile crop, and you can usually find them in some shape or form, regardless of where you are in the world. And for that reason, it is a great starter crop for anyone new to the world of growing vegetables, and particularly allotments. Throughout the world, there are probably 2,500 to 3,000 different varieties, which can seem a bit of a minefield when you start off. But however, in the UK, they're actually grouped into three classifications. There's first early, second early, and main crop. Over the pond in the USA, Canada, you may find the word determinates and indeterminates. For determinates, I would class these similar to our first and second earlies, where they grow in one layer and they mature quite quickly. And for the indeterminates, these will grow on multiple layers with much longer growing period. So it's a good idea to decide what you actually want from the potato before you choose a variety. Some are better for chips or fries, others better for baked potatoes, jacket, mash or boiled. Some potatoes can tick a number of those boxes, but not all of them can. So do your homework, search on the internet for the best boiling, chipping or roast potato, and it will then give you a range of varieties to go for. As mentioned previously, the first, second and main crops, they are determined roughly by how long the potato takes from maturing, from planting the seed potato, or the tuber as it's known, right the way up to harvest. Now this is variable depending on where you are located. So someone on the south coast could get a crop much quicker than somebody at the north of Scotland because of the temperature variation. And also it'll determine all if you're growing indoors in a polytunnel or a greenhouse as opposed to growing outside. So the soil temperature can have a big effect on it all. But in general, I work on personally for first earlies planting round about mid-March. Traditionally, St Patrick's Day is used as an indicator, which is the 17th of March. And working on that, I work on 10 to 12 weeks for first earlies. But saying that, there are some varieties which have been bred recently called Swift, and the other one is Rocket, where given the right conditions and temperatures, you can be harvesting them from 8 weeks onwards. Looking at second earlies, I usually plant these from early to mid-April, and these reach maturity around about 12 to 16 weeks. And for the main crop varieties, those are 16 to 20 weeks for me, and planted them mid to late April onwards. 16 to 20 weeks, say, is a ballpark figure because I've had main crop potatoes in the ground for almost 10 months. There is another potato group that you may come across, and that's called second cropping. These are sometimes known as Christmas potatoes. And in the UK, these are tend to be planted around about any time during August, with hopefully obtaining an harvest in time for our Christmas lunch. But I like to use first early potatoes for this, but second earlies will do as well. Here in mainland UK, we're rather fortunate regarding purchasing potatoes. Dotted around the country from early January right up until the spring, we have these little events called potato days. Now it's here that the potato growers and breeders get together and bring their products for sale. You may get some breeders bring actually over 100 different varieties, and that's an ideal case there to go and get a heritage variety or a rare one that you're looking for. Much more variation than those that you can get from the general garden centre. If you do go to one of these days, do your homework before you go. Measure your beds, work out how many tubers you actually need, or if you're growing in containers, the same again. The reason I say that is because a lot of the breeders will actually sell the potatoes by weight, so in kilograms, but for the more rarer breeds, they'll actually sell them individual tubers. So once you've worked out what you actually need, I would add an extra 10% on, just in case one of the tubers rot or get damaged or something like that. And at the end of the day, if you have got surplus, you could always put a few in a container or maybe give them to another gardener. Looking at that list that I described a little bit earlier on, the name Sarpo cropped up a few times. And what that is, it's a potato range that was bred purely to combat the blight disease, which can wipe crops out in no time at all. So here in the mainland UK, we've got about 5 or 6 variants of that available. But the good news for the people over in the States and Canada, the certification has been passed. Those potatoes are over there now, currently being bred on the East Coast in Maine, and hopefully they should be available for you to purchase, probably 2022, maybe 2023. What I'll do, I'll put a link to the website of the farm that's growing them, and if you're interested, you can contact them and register. So hopefully we've survived the dilemma of choosing which varieties to grow, and then our seed potatoes arrive. Just one word there I would say is that I always buy certified seed potatoes. Now I know a lot of people will save potatoes from one year to the next, and others will actually buy potatoes from supermarkets and actually plant those. If you're happy with that, fair enough, there's no problem at all. But I like to buy certified because there's less chance of bringing any virus into the beds, and that's the last thing you want. So we've got our potatoes, our varieties, first early, second early, main crop, whichever you've chosen. And then next comes a choice of chitting. This is a bone of contention with a lot of gardeners, whether it's required or not. What chitting actually is that the seed potato, or the tuber, that is like a domed with a little flat end on it, known as the rose end usually. And that's where the majority of your chits will come out, or the little shoots as I'm called, or sprouts, or in the area where I live, they're known as spruts. And the opposite end to that is called the heel or the stem, and that's where it's attached, the umbilical, to the original plant. Dotted around the tuber, you'll actually see what they call the lateral eyes or buds or nodes. And during the times of the war, where potatoes was quite scarce, well, food was, they would actually cut a potato, slice it, and as long as it had got an eye in, they'd leave it to dry for a couple of days, then actually plant it out. And so you could actually get 2 or 3 potato plants, probably more, out of one actual tuber. But the majority of people now just use one tuber for planting out. So it's a matter of choice to say chitting or not. These have just come out of the bag where they've been delivered, and there's some sprouts showing. These are at an ideal stage now for chitting. They're white at the moment because they've been lacking a little bit of light. Because they're at a tiny stage, that's not an issue. So as long as you keep them in a frost-free place with light, them chits there will turn to a dark colour, and that's ideal for what you want. I like to get mine for planting out stage round about 1 centimetre, 10 millimetres long. Anything longer than that, I don't want it. And you definitely don't want to purchase a potato, put them into the bag into a cupboard and leave them and think about them when it's time for planting out, and the spruts or the chits and that long. That's no good at all. You want them nice and tiny. The other thing to remember is the more sprouts or chits you've got on a tuber, the smaller the potatoes will be that it produces. So if you're looking for large potatoes, it's an idea to rub the majority of the spruts off. So we've decided if we're going to chit or not to chit. It doesn't really matter because, I mean, you can put a potato in any way. If you put it upside down, it'll grow, it'll find its way back up to the surface. It's just a matter, you're saving a little bit of time. For me personally, I chit the first and second earliest, but main crop. Them in the ground that long, it doesn't really matter. So you've decided if you're going to chit it or not to chit. Once we've done that, we'll have a look at the soil that's needed. When you empty the bags, be very, very careful, because some of the eyes will actually be sticking through the mesh netting, and you don't want to risk ripping some of them valuable chits off. So just take them out very, very carefully. As usual, inspect everything. Make sure there's no rot on at all. There's a number of ways of storing these. Quite a favourite amongst people is using these egg boxes and just placing them in like that. Keeps them nice and upright and the shoots facing upwards. Another thing you can actually use is these 24 cell seed trays, an ideal size again. But one for me personally I like to do, especially if I've got a lot, is to use these mushroom trays. And these are ideal because you can actually stack them on top of each other if you've got a lot. Just put them in on the edge like that. You can put them in touching, doesn't really matter, but do keep your eye on them. Make sure that there's no sign of any rot or going squidgy. And the other thing I recommend is if you do use a mushroom tray, just prop it up at an angle, and it makes it so much easier to rest the potatoes. As I mentioned earlier, because I'm growing quite a lot of this same variety, I'm going to be chitting these in the mushroom tray. As I said, it is okay for them to touch each other. Just be careful that none of them start rotting. And the other important thing, of course, is to make sure you label the trays, because quite a few of these tubers of different varieties do look the same. Because we're still having some fairly cool nights, I won't be leaving these in the greenhouse for the time being. I'll be taking them into the conservatory, where I think the temperatures we get in there, minimums around about 8 degrees, which they should be okay with. So that's the first tray full. Here's the label here for it, Charlotte. Just pop it down the edge there just to keep it in place. I'm about halfway through at the moment. When considering the soil for the potatoes, ideally you want a loose, well-drained loamy soil. If your soil's too clay, there's a risk that it will retain too much moisture and you'll pay the ultimate price of the tubers rotting. Preparation really needs to start in the autumn or fall. Once you know the area that you're going to be planting the potatoes in, then I'd give it a good top dressing with well-rotted manure or compost, and this then over the winter months gives the worms time to pull it in and enrich the soil. Looking at fertilisers for potatoes, for me, by preparing the ground a few months in advance, that's enough usually to carry them through the whole season and get a decent crop. You can of course add additional things to the soil. Bone mills adds phosphates and calcium, but for me, growing out in the beds, especially if I've trenched the potatoes with little valleys, I'll fill the valleys full of rotting horse manure, and over a period of time that rots down. Particularly when it rains, it washes all the nutrients into the soil which the potatoes feed off. You can of course buy specific fertilisers just for potatoes, and the thing to do on there is have a look on the box for the NPK value, the N being the nitrogen, the P being the phosphates, and the K being the potash. Usually the N and P values are very, very similar to each other. It could be something like an 8 or a 13. But when you look at the potash value, the K, that is usually higher, and sometimes it's 50% higher. What the nitrogen and the phosphates do, it actually feeds the roots of the plants, and also the haulms, the bit which grows out of the soil, the green foliage if you like. But the potash is the one that actually goes down and expands the tubers, which at the end of the day is our prize when we come to harvest. During my time here on the allotment, when growing potatoes in the open ground, I've used two different methods. None better than any of the other, it's just two different ways I've chosen to grow them, and both have returned good results. It's by no means the definitive guide to growing potatoes. In fact, there's lots of other ways. People who do the no-dig method will use a different technique altogether. But hopefully this is a method I've used and I have had good returns. The first one I'm going to look at is probably the most popular and the first one you'll use as you start growing. You may see it as earthing up, ridging or a hilling method. And what it is, you start with a flat piece of ground, bore a hole, put the potato in. Now usually for my potatoes, regardless of the crop, I tend to put them down between 10 and 12 inches. That's 25 to 30 centimetres. So you bore your holes, set the spacing regardless of what the type of the potato is. Put the potato in, say 10 and 12 inches deep. And then as soon as the potato starts growing, the shoot or the horn will appear above the ground. As this gets higher, what you do then, you actually fetch the soil from each side of the potatoes and form a ridge or a hill, and that's what it's called. And in effect, you create a mountain in which the potato grows up, and each side of it are the valleys created, caused by you fetching the earth up to create the mound at the top. Fine way to carry on growing like that and just leave it. But my personal preference then was, with the valleys created, was actually to fill those up with horse manure, rotting horse manure. Now that has a double effect. Firstly, by filling the valleys completely and slightly above the mound, I tend to put straw on the top. And should we have any light, chilly nights, the straw does act as a little bit of extra protection for the potatoes. But secondly, and more importantly for me, with the manure in those valleys, during the growing season, as it rains, the water comes in and washes all the nutrients back into the soil, which then in addition feeds the potatoes. So using that method, I actually found there was no need to add any additional feed to the growing season. Well, in the words of Wallace and Gromit, it's a grand day out, but only for today unfortunately. The next few days we've got rain coming in, so the immediate plan for me now is to get some potatoes in. These two beds here, I'm going to put Charlottes in here and the Sarpars in there. I'm not going to put the Sarpars in yet, but the Charlottes are going to go in 3 rows. Now normally I dig a trench out and then bulb planter, put the potato in, bit of compost, fertiliser, cover it back up. These beds have recently been covered with reasonably rotted manure. There's quite a lot in here, and hopefully the worms have took it down. So instead of digging the trench out, I'm just going to go straight down with the bulb planter, put the potato in, fertiliser, cover it up, and then put the plastic back on. So let's go. The mix I'm going to be filling the potato holes with, it's 3 parts multi-purpose compost and 1 part of this 6X manure. There's a bit of bloodfish and bone in as well, and I'll also chuck a few slug pellets down there just in case. Okay, I've put 8 sticks along the edge of the bed to roughly line out where each potato is going to be, and I'll use them as a marker as I move the plank along for the different rows. I dug a hole in there with the bulb planter. That's probably down 8 or 9 inches, and what I'll do then is put the potato in there with a bit of the mix I've made. I'm also going to add a few slug pellets in here as well, just in case. is all done. I've actually marked the rows with my old faithful friend, the electrical tape. I just put a staple in between on the end of each line. So I'll just put the covers back on now to keep the soil warm for 2 or 3 weeks before hopefully we'll see them sprouting up. As soon as the shoots begin to appear above the surface of the soil, they will grow at a very fast rate. Now is a good time to consider earthing or ridging the rows. Create the ridges 10 to 12 inches, that's 25 to 30 centimetres above the soil level. This will give the young tender shoots added protection against any overnight frost that may still be lurking. And remember, check the last frost dates for your area. That's just a light earthing up I've given them. I might pop a bit of fleece over the top first, then put the polythene back on, because as I say, we have got another frost forecast for tonight. I've got some rotting manure at the top, so I'll just fill the valleys up, and the sunflowers then they'll take the nutrients out of that as it rots down. This is the morning after the horse manure was put on, so I've topped the valleys up. As you'll see already, the potatoes are popping through there lovely, and the sunflowers have perked up. The second method that I use when growing potatoes in open ground is usually called a trench method. Now I suppose I adopted this to try and save me a little bit of extra hard work by creating the furrows in the bed. And the way this works is create a square channel, and to do this I use a little mantis rotavator. Take that up and down the row where the potatoes are going to be planted. This creates a little channel around about 10 to 12 inches square, 25 to 30 centimetres, and the soil is very, very fine. When I fetch this out, it's easy to fetch it out with a spade. So you remove the soil, put that on its side, and then with the flat bed channel created, then I use a bulb planter, and just in the positions where the potato tubers are going to go, create a little depression only about 3 to 4 inches deep, and that there is purely to keep the potato up in an upright position. So by creating the little pockets along the row, I put the potatoes in with the eyes and the sprouts, chits facing upwards. And then when I start to backfill, you can then add your fertiliser, whatever you want to use. In my case, it's usually well-rotted horse manure, but I do use other additions like 6X. And you can use the granular potato fertiliser as well. So as you backfill, mix this fertiliser within the whole lot, and you pull the soil over, and it in effect then makes the bed completely flat again. Just to top it up then, in our previous method where we filled the valleys up with rotting horse manure and straw, in this occasion then I just put a top layer of straw manure right on the top bed, usually 6 to 8 inches, maybe 15 to 20 centimetres, and that then does the same effect over the period of the growing season. That rots down nicely into the soil, producing additional food for the potatoes. To finish the bed off, I've used a top dressing of some stable manure now. That'll do one or two things. First of all, it'll get a bit of protection should we have a light frost coming, and secondly, when it does rain, it'll wash the nutrients of the manure back into the soil for the potatoes to feed on. This here is just the top dressing of horse manure that I put on when we was having the few nips of frost. So I'll just rake this off then and we'll start digging the crop up. It's fairly fresh manure, what I put into the valleys of the potatoes, but it's dug in quite well, and I think I'll just leave this bit fallow. And these are the rewards of these 6 tubers of Orla. Initially I thought it was going to have a lot of slug trouble, but not too much damage on there. I've caught the fork with a few as usual, but apart from that, there's a few pounds in there. I don't know how heavy exactly, but so that's the variety Orla of the 6 tubers which was in that end bed. On the row on the left there, that's the 2 rows of potatoes of Swift, and this here is off the 1 row of Orla. The crop is amazing. I've already given about 6 or 8 potatoes to another guy on the plot to try them, and so I've still got 1 row left here to harvest, and I think I'll be getting those out tomorrow. You've no doubt heard on a number of occasions how I dislike harvesting potatoes. Yesterday a very kind friend and a fellow plot elder kindly offered to help me harvest the sorpows. Probably a month earlier than I usually do, but I thought I'd take the offer up. Right. They've all been harvested, and this is the bed, and you may remember the way I did it last year. I actually used the mantis to produce a slot, more or less, then planted with a ball planter. Well, this is how easy it was to harvest the potatoes. We actually located them under the ground and then just picked them up. I'll just pop you into the greenhouse and show you the ball of sorpows that we've harvested. We've got 3 buckets here, and as you can see, there's quite a variety in size. There's no scab at all and no slug damage, which is a huge bonus. Mind you, I didn't get any of that last year. There's some monsters here and there, and so there's 2 or 3 showing here. This one looks probably one of the biggest. And what I'll do, I'll pop that on in the kitchen scales and just weigh that out of curiosity and let you know what it is. And a bit later on also, I'll put the 3 buckets on the scales and we'll get a total weight. Well, that just about wraps it up, folks. I do hope you've enjoyed it and got something out of it, particularly the newer growers we have on YouTube now. I have got quite a lot more of this style to release, covering other different vegetables that I grow on my allotment. If you've not already subscribed, there's a button down the corner. Click on that, and also click on the bell, and that will notify you when I upload a new video. So many thanks for watching. I'm Nigel Jewkes. You've been watching MuddyBootz Allotment.